Hello all and welcome back to another Doctor Who Big Finish audio drama review, however this time round from a slightly different range to usual, as I'm going to be reviewing a Big Finish audio drama release from a series that I never normally listen to. It is of course the Torchwood main range. I'm going to be taking a look at the most recent release from that series, which is of course Smashed, as written by James Goss, featuring Eve Myles as the one and only Gwen Cooper. I was intrigued and therefore I'm listening to this episode and I'm going to review it all for you today. And that is very much why I am sat here right now. I was simply intrigued by the concept of this story, because when it comes to the Doctor Who universe, there is only Torchwood that could pull off an episode such as this one, having one of their main protagonists basically being drunk and needed to save the universe whilst being completely drunk. And of course, as you will all know by now, as you can see by the background, I'm back at uni. I've been back at uni probably for just over a month, and no doubt you will know when you go back to uni, the drinking does slightly up from when you're normally at home, especially at the very beginning of the year. Therefore, as I reach just out of camera, drinking has been a part of my life now for the past month. It has been a pretty prominent part of my life for the past month. Therefore, reviewing a Big Finish audio drama story that basically involves drinking this makes complete sense, because it's what I've been doing. Therefore, I relate to Gwen Cooper on a spiritual level, and that's why I'm reviewing this for you all today. Before I even get into the episode itself, of course Torchwood is of course for older Doctor Who fans. Therefore, if you are a younger listener or a younger viewer of this channel, please do note that Torchwood does of course contain adult material and it is only suited for older listeners. So if you are intrigued, then wait until you're older, be lawful and be good, and wait a few years and then you can listen to this story. First off, and of course as always in the description below, there will be the link to go and buy this release from the Big Finish website. It is of course out now, and I do believe it is exclusive to the Big Finish website up until the end of December 2019. The physical CD is only £9.99 and the download is only £7.99, so it is incredibly accessible and, to be quite honest, a pretty decent bargain at full price. So if you are intrigued by this review, or if you are intrigued by the concept of this story as a whole, then go out and buy this release, treat yourself, cause it's only 10 quid and you're gonna have a right laugh, which I definitely did. And who knows, of course on The Host Productions we are a very professional channel and I take things very, very seriously. Therefore, I'm not going to be drinking at all throughout this review, and in fact, much like any other video on this channel, the only thing that is going to be in this cup right here is only tea, because I'm good and take my job seriously. It's a bit strong, the tea is, not anything else. So let's get right into it. Eve Myles does an absolutely phenomenal job. I thoroughly enjoyed this story as a whole. I think that this episode is an absolutely brilliant balance between having fun and having a lot of humour. And I think that it's very obvious that has been written by James Goss as well, because that humour is very prominent all the way throughout the story's duration, but also at the same time it is aware that it is not just there for being comedic. There's a lot of problems that are faced throughout this story which are rather adult, and I think that it's a nice twist, because I was going into this story thinking it was perhaps going to be an alien that, I don't know, sort of brainwashes its victim into drinking constantly, or it's an alcoholic beverage that is an alien or something like that. However, we see Gwen Cooper travelling to a rather deprived area of Wales that has been abandoned essentially by the majority of the powers that be above, and they are running low on everything. There isn't many jobs going on. However, the one thing that is prominent is fracking in the local area, which involves of course pumping water into mines, I do believe at a very high velocity, basically trying to get shale gas or something out of the ground. And this whole episode is basically what happens when that occurs. However, maybe the only thing that comes out of the ground isn't just shale gas, but something a little bit more sinister that could put the entirety of Wales and the rest of the world at threat. Eve Myles does a brilliant job of supporting the entirety of this story. I absolutely adored Gwen throughout this release. To give you an idea of when this is set within Torchwood's timeline, from what I understand, it is basically after the events of TV Torchwood when Gwen Cooper is working alone, and it is just before the Big Finish. The story continues with God Among Us and Aliens Among Us, so basically she has the child with Reese, who you do not see throughout this story, and it's nice to see her kind of going on her own mission by herself. In this story, she does also acquire kind of a companion-style character called Martin, as portrayed by Omar Austin, and he does a brilliant job as well. It's nice to see their relationship kind of get off to a rocky start at the beginning of this episode, and then it develops all the way throughout, and you have a lot of fun with that character. The drill pack manager, who is the main company that is doing the fracking, is portrayed by Dick Branham, and we do also have Helen Griffin in there as well, playing Ryan, and Helen Griffin did of course sadly pass away just recently, so this is one of her last acting credits. From what I understand, Eve Myles does have a lot of respect for Helen Griffin. This episode is in fact dedicated to her at the very beginning, which is a really lovely touch. Finally, the last character on the cast list is Elwyn, as portrayed by Kesrena James. So I think it will be no spoiler to say the main premise of this episode basically involves a form of alien or a form of unknown creature from the past of Earth, and basically the one way to try and keep yourself from being not taken over by them is by drinking, by having the alcohol within your system and basically drowning out this pathogen that is about to take over your brain and basically turn you into this feral zombie creature. And throughout the entirety of this story you have this absolutely brilliant imagery that is incredibly haunting and spooky of seeing this dishevelled, sort of broken down town being taken over by these zombie creatures lurking around trying to find people who are not as of yet in this feral kind of condition. And you see Gwen Cooper constantly drinking and constantly being intoxicated throughout this episode in order to maintain that sense of self, and of course that does lead to a lot of rather fun moments, quite a bit of swearing and a few possibly bits of drug use in there as well in order to maintain herself. And I think that it is handled very, very well. I think there are some lovely moments, even though she is intoxicated. There is this great moment within her car where she's talking to Martin about everything that is occurring around them right now is caused by humans, and humans are the main threat, and there is this lovely realisation within the story of how dangerous the humans are, and that is of course reflected as well from the political aspect of this story, I suppose, as well as the economical side, because we have this business and corporation that's came in to do that fracking, and it doesn't really care about the locals around them. It doesn't care about the impact it will have on them. Of course, in this episode it is a bit more exaggerated to what it would be within real life, because we're not going to have this ancient pathogen coming out of the ground to take over everyone. However, at the same time, you have that idea of local governments and powers above basically not doing anything for these people that are very vulnerable within society, turn to alcohol, because they have essentially nothing to do. They don't need to go to jobs, they don't have that schedule that people in employment do have. And I think that this story does really nicely play with that in a rather respectful manner, but also at the same time has a really brilliant light-hearted element, of course, with having Gwen and Martin. Of course, Martin being this rather sober character who tries to remain sober throughout the majority of the story, but does eventually, of course, need to cave in, of course, resorting from being taken over by the creature, while Eve is having the time of her life portraying this drunk version of Gwen that admittedly still has a lot of control, and she gets the situation done, and in style. There is this brilliant moment within the later half where she says that Torchwood is problematic or something like that, and they do fail on occasion. However, when they do fail, they fail Torchwood style, and it's just, as I say, a lot of fun. If you are a fan of Gwen, this episode basically summarises why you like her as a character. She has a great personality, she's incredibly likeable, she's also very sassy and has a great sense of humour, and James Goss gets that. I'm glad that James Goss written this story because he has an amazing grasp on emotion, but also at the same time can create these thought-provoking, creative stories. Taking a look in fact at the credits for this story and talking about the general sound design as a whole, because I think it is pretty standout for this release. The director is Scott Handcock, so it does have a very modern contemporary feel, and it does actually feel like Torchwood is still being made today, but on TV. I visualised this story incredibly well in my head. The music has been created by Blair Mowat, who personally I adore his music anyway, therefore that suited me a lot. The producer is James Goss, the script editor is David Llewellyn, and the sound design has been created by Richard Fox at Fox Yason Studios. And I think that, as I say, every single part of the production team and every aspect work together incredibly well within this story to create a very stylish and slick Torchwood episode that in fact runs very, very smoothly indeed, given that the main protagonist is several bottles in, stumbling all over, and there's an occasional bit of vomit in there as well. So it is an episode like no other, and one that I think will never be made again. It's unique in its own right, and kind of deserves to be appreciated for that. I've just also seen on the credits as well, the writer brackets additional dialogue is Eve Myles, so it's very clear that Eve put a lot, because she knows Gwen inside out, of course, and I think that it was very clear that she contributed to this story in a way that she brought more life into Gwen because she knows the character. She can get to grips with the character personally, and I think that if it was any other actor from Torchwood doing this story, it wouldn't be the same, but because it's Eve Myles throwing in her additional bits of dialogue, it just made this story so fun and so brilliant, but also so dark and horrific at the same time. So overall, for Torchwood Smashed, as written by James Goss, this is a beauty. It is a beauty of a release that I highly recommend purchasing if you are a fan of Torchwood, a fan of Gwen, or simply, very much like me, were intrigued as to how this story was actually going to work. And I think that from a personal perspective of not really listening to too much Torchwood, the most dedicated I do in fact get is listening to the Torchwood 1 series. I never delve fully into the Torchwood audios. However, after this main range story, I may do it. I may review more Torchwood. I think it will completely depend on how busy I am, but the beauty about this range is that it is self-contained. From my understand, all of the main range releases are stories in their own right. There may be a slight plot arc here and there. However, for the most part, they are stories in their own right. So it's nice just to be able to dip in every so often and enjoy a story such as this one. So yeah, who knows? I may review more Torchwood main range in the future, or maybe even some of their previous releases. Maybe recommend some Torchwood main range stories in the description below, because the beauty of this series is that it's not £25 or above. It's not a £30–40 box set. It is only £10 for one physical story, and I think that it is pretty much impossible to not get your money's worth for that price. So I hope you have enjoyed this review. Why not leave some Torchwood recommendations in the comments section below, and I hope you have enjoyed this change to the Big Finish review format, even though it has not been as sober as usual. So without further ado, I'm going to finish my drink, then probably go on a night out, and I shall see you all next time. Bye for now, and drink responsibly.